Hello, welcome to, it's the final day of London Craft Week. It's been a really busy week full of lots of demonstrations and talks. And today we've got the lovely Saskia Marjoram of Flower Essences, who is here not only to tell us a bit about the energetic healing properties of plants, but to talk us through her distilling process and how we get to incorporate this into our lives. It's really exciting. There's a lot to get through. But before we sort of get to all the nitty gritty, Saskia, would you like to tell us a little bit about your story and how you fell into this?
How I fell into plants.
Fell into plants.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like they've all encompassed my life. And in fact, someone asked me recently about when did I first notice that plants were my thing. And I didn't know it wasn't a thing for everybody. They're kind of wanting to know the names of plants when you were little and doing your press. I mean, loads of women come up to me and say they've made, when they were little, they used to make potions from rose petals and it would go all moldy and it'd be really disappointing, which is where the distilling comes in, because with distilling, we end up getting a really good rose potion if we put roses in there, rather than the mushed up moldy thing that you want to make when you're a little girl. But so obviously lots of us are naturally drawn to plants, but I think I was probably more drawn than other people. But it was only when I got a gardening job that I realized that plants were my thing. And that it was just like, it was like coming home. And I think in society, we forget how, maybe in the city more, but even in the country, we forget how supportive we are by the plants. I mean, not only for our food and our clothes and newspapers and all the rest of it, but for, for our well-being, for on all levels, for our, our health and happiness. And so working with the essences, the flower essences, rather than the distilling process, it's a different level of them looking after us. It means that we can take them inside of us and take them around with us all day, rather than having them separate.
But through gardening, then you fall straight into this job. It's one thing to be gardening, one thing to just think, oh wait a minute, everything I'm working with here has a magical power. I mean, that's
that didn't happen till a lot longer. I got my first gardening job, which was actually for Prince Michael of Kent. I could walk up from my mum's house through the woods, which again was the best part of the job, was 20 minutes walking up through the woods every day and back.
Rain and shine.
Yeah, rain and shine every day, and loving that, even though I'd grown up in those woods. But so it was my first gardening job, and then I kind of went into floristry, and I had a thing growing my own cut flowers, and then I ended up working for the Prince of Wales as his assistant florist for a long time. But in amongst that, I still wasn't like, I'm using healing plants. It was like, you were gardening. So you were doing gardening, and then you were doing a florist. So you were making lovely flower arrangements or whatever. And obviously I was working with the energetics all along, but I wasn't consciously aware of that. It was only when I discovered flower essences through being in crisis with my family, or just getting to that stage in your life when it's like, I can't cope anymore, and someone suggesting essences might really help, that then I got into the flower essences and the energetics of the plants. And that was a bit more than 20 years ago. We've been making essences for 20 years. The distilling came later, and brought in a completely extra dimension to the whole thing. So that was really good. But yes, it was. It's been a long journey, and it was. It's only suddenly when you kind of look back and go, oh, all those plant jobs have led me to actually knowing what I'm doing. Whether I'm not sure I actually still know what I'm doing, to be fair, but I feel like I am on a path, and I'm learning more every day about each plant. And every time I talk about an essence or a plant to someone, more information comes in about that plant, or you'll be interested. So you pick up what someone's written or what someone said about a particular plant and it adds in. And so, 20, 30 years down the line, you kind of go, oh, actually, I'm the woman they come to and ask me those questions. Sometimes I can know the answer, and sometimes I can point them to someone else.
Can you explain to us then a little bit more in detail what the energetic healing property of a plant really means, where it sort of comes from? What is this? It's not smelling the flower and going, oh, I feel better about that.
It's not smelling the flower. I mean, we all know that when we are near plants, they make us feel better. When you go to the park, or when you're in your garden, or when someone brings you a bunch of flowers, even if they're the, grown under lights, horrible chemical ones from the supermarket, they make us feel better. You don't take plastic flowers to someone in a hospital because they don't do the same healing. But we do that intuitively. We just know that plants make us feel better. I suppose what my work has meant is that then I know what specific healing properties plants have on an energetic level. So on the energetic level, what you're talking about with flower essences anyway, you're talking about the personality of the plant. So rather than being healed by the chemicals that are held in the plant, which the distilling, we'll come into that, but the distilling helps you be able to have the chemical compounds of the plant as well as the energetics. But with flower essences, the energy of that plant, it's like you're taking that plant's personality into your body and being able to hear what it's got to tell you. So if you take oak essence into your body as drops, or even externally where it's absorbed through your skin, which is where the mists come in, which again we'll talk about later. But when you absorb that liquid with that vibration into your body, the energy of that plant, we can hear it. It adjusts how we are in the world. So you have taken oak energy into your body, a bit like when you spend time with a human, you become more like that person. It kind of recalibrates you more towards how an oak tree would be. So that kind of solid, steady, slow, there's no rush. It's like supportive. It's there for you every time. You know, if we live in the UK, we've all got a relationship with oak trees on some level.
Is that what oak does? Is it a sort of grounding?
Yeah, it's kind of got this real slow and steady wins the race, not having to rush through things. So if you're like a workaholic or you're going too fast, or it's just got that real steady. I mean, I often talk about oak tree, not necessarily because it's one that I know, but I know that everyone can relate to it on some level. They kind of have got their favorite oak tree, or they can kind of feel into it a bit, and they like being on their own in the field. And
I thought this last time actually we did a talk, and I don't know if you were touching this, when you're sort of walking through the forest, or you decide, how do you pick your new flower? I mean, how do you go, daffodil? I mean, how does the flower come to you?
Yes, yes, pretty much. Yeah, you hear them. Sometimes it's really gentle shout, whisper, that you kind of keep noticing the same flower everywhere you go. That happened to me when I made red chestnut essence, actually, that it's like I'd never noticed a red chestnut in the area where I grew up, where I lived for 40 years. Never seen a red chestnut tree in my life till this one year. And there they were everywhere I drove. It was like, oh, there's another red chestnut. Oh, there's another one. And it was just, okay, I have to make an essence from this.
And how long till you know?
It was for my own inner healing, and eventually we had a range of essences that then together they probably pretty much cover what issues most people have.
So interesting, yes.
Yeah.
And is it quite broad? What does red chestnut do? I'm just curious.
It was when my boys were teenagers, actually. And I was kind of the cool mum who wasn't really, in my head, wasn't really a worrier, and I let them get away with a lot more than most parents would, and now regret it sometimes. Going, why didn't I rein them in a bit? But they weren't reinable. But what I could do was stop worrying about them. And with the bark remedies, he'd already made a red chestnut. So when I looked it up, what that red chestnut essence did, it said it helped with people who worry about other people a lot. And I was like, well, I'm not a worrier. Why do I need that? Why do I need that? I'm not a worrier. And then I realized that I have my phone by the side of the bed every night, and I would lie awake going, I'm not sure I've heard them come in yet. Were they out on their bikes? What happens if they fall in the canal and they haven't got their ID on them? Those kind of things, which doesn't help. There's nothing you can do about it. It just stops you sleeping. So red chestnut stops that going round and round. So stocking
up on red chestnut the minute we get off this talk.
It's a really good mum's. But
it's a mum one. It sounds like a really good one.
And it came up a lot during lockdown, and I wondered why. Obviously, we were worried about our loved ones, so that would come up more. I come in, but it was. Then I discovered it's more about worrying about things you have no control over and you can't do anything about. So that kind of like new information coming in about this hideous pandemic or whatever was going on. There's nothing you can do about it. You can only deal with what's right in front of you. Basically, there's no point lying awake worrying about wars or famines.
We know that, but it's nice to have something that supports us.
So if you've got something that stops you doing that, that's brilliant.
Before I ask the next question, which is going to go into the whole distilling process, how long does it take you to figure out or to understand what that plant's main property is once you find the plant?
That's a good question, and there is no answer, unfortunately.
Ongoing, I guess, the research.
Again, it's what I really like people to know is that essences can really help with, that it's not like taking medicine. When you take an essence, you can feel it as like taking medicine because it's helping you become more whole. But it's much more about having a relationship with that plant, which is where the distilling comes in as well. It's like you get a different dynamic. So some humans, they're very open and they let you know quite quickly who they are and what they're about and you know, what sort of person they are. But sometimes it can take you years to get deeper into that, you know, to get deeper, and suddenly you get new information comes in, you go, oh, she used to be a ballet dancer. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And so it is with the essences. There's always more information coming in. Some of them are quite quick to work out what they're for. You know, dandelion, for instance, you've got the color, you've got the name, the lion bit, and you've got how it makes you feel, and you've got the look of it. And the herbal uses come in, and so you can get clues as to what a flower essence will do. But again, like a human interaction, a human relationship, everyone responds differently, slightly differently. You know, to you, for instance, when they meet you, everyone will, depending on their own stuff or how long they've known you, they'll all respond differently to you slightly, even though you're still being you. You know, I mean, plants are great because they're much more truer to who they are, and they don't change in relation to you so much. I think they do slightly, but that's a deeper conversation.
They're not affected by the latest trends or their kids at school.
Or, you know, like as humans, we're empathetic to the person we're dealing with, and so we do shift our behavior, whether that's subconsciously or not, depending on who we're interacting with. Whereas a dandelion is going to be a dandelion for everyone, but everyone will respond differently to that plant. So getting a really good picture of what a flower essence does when you take it is quite difficult and very subjective. So it's difficult to kind of pin it down to, you know, like a pharmaceutical drug, for instance. They can say, well, we've given it to this many people with this disease and it's done this to them all, or, you know, there are side effects, different side effects.
Well, it does, even pharmaceutical drugs, they affect people differently.
Yeah.
So going on to the distilling, how do you go about distilling the plants to extract these magical properties?
Well, with flower essences, you don't.
Okay.
So that's the big lesson. Is the
what is the difference?
The distilling has nothing to do with making a flower essence, which is mainly what I do. I usually work with flower essences, which are like the bark remedies, which you take as drops under your tongue. And then I got into distilling. So it's a kind of side thing, and it confuses people because the words essences and essential oils, and we've got this big problem. But when I got into distilling, it was through a friend of mine. I went and stayed with her in France. She was teaching in the medicinal herb school in Lyon. And one evening she said, oh, should we get the still out and we can have a go? And I was like, oh, yes, please. And so she got her still out, and it was a little dark room, you know, and it was in France. She had her still out, and she said, oh, what should we distill? And I was like, oh, well, when I was getting through the train on the way, I kept noticing all the mistletoe in all the poplar trees in France. When you go on the train, there's all these amazing poplar trees, which we don't have really in the UK. And she said, okay, well, let's go and get some mistletoe leaves, not the berries. The berries are poisonous. And mistletoe itself as a herb is very good for heart medicine. I think it's one of those that you should get a herbalist to prescribe. So I wouldn't go like making mistletoe tea and munching the leaves or anything. But she set it up in her house, like a bit like this. It was much smaller, actually. In Europe, most people have stills who live in the country. You know, they make their own liquor and they distill their own eau de vie, and it's not a big deal. In the UK, we have a different relationship to this. But I did know as soon as I got near it, there was no question about not having done it in past lives, you know, or it being in our genetic code. It's the kind of one of those bits of kits that, you know, for, well, centuries.
Well, it makes a lot of sense just looking at it. You understand, you know.
And it's really simple. You know, the design hasn't changed because it doesn't need to. It so, you know, does what it needs to do, and there's no really changing. It's so efficient in its design. But when I discovered that, not only do you get, when you put the herb in this piece, and then you put the liquid in here, the water in here, and then you put your plant material in there, and it basically what happens is the steam blasts the cell walls apart of the plant. And so they come up as steam through here, and then drop into the cold water here, and then it comes out as a liquid. And that's when you get the essential oil. If you were going to distill essential oil, that's how you would do it. And the essential oil comes in first and it floats on top. But the liquid underneath, which is called a hydrosol, amazed me because not only did it contain a much broader range of chemical compounds of the plant. So you've got all the healing properties. You've got the alcohol, you know, you've got all the chemicals that would come out with alcohol extraction, water extraction, and oil extraction. So you've got a really broad range of plant chemicals in your liquid. But you also got the vibration. And that's what really excited me.
I love that, knowing there's a vibration.
I know. Well, when it came out, it was like the liquid came out. It was like, oh, it's an alive It's an alive liquid that comes out. It's not just a blank. Depending on how you distill, I must say I have bought hydrosols that have been quite dead because they're just the byproduct of the essential oil. But when you do it slowly, you've got this liquid that's like, okay. Some of them, they were just like pulsing. I could nearly feel them because I'm tuned into plant energy. I'm kind of got that sensitivity. That I've kind of built up over the years. We probably all have it. I've just tuned into mine because I need to. Most people have if they take the time. If you give someone, I do it often when I teach, is that we all experience the same plant and we all come back with the same information, pretty much, but from our own personal perspective. But so out of the still comes this liquid, this whole liquid. Basically, it's the whole plant, it's the energy of the plant, it's the chemical compounds. The heavy compounds stay at the bottom, so often lots of the poisons, like alkaloids, would stay in the water here because they're too heavy and dense, and so you'd have this amazing healing liquid that will last you at least a year if you keep it cool. So you've got this, rather than having to dry your herbs and then going a bit moldy or having your herb tea or whatever, you come out with this liquid that's got all the healing properties of the plant. Which,
so exciting.
And I was just like okay.
Wow.
So, and then I wondered, it might be a bit long to talk about here, but then I wondered what would happen if I diluted it down like I do when I make a flower essence. So you've got like 1 in 60,000 micro dilution of the hydrosol, and I've been using those in my practice a lot. For people, and they work on a much more physical level, where the physical and emotional meet rather than an emotional level.
Is that more for like people that get skin problems? Or
illness? I mean, if you use the hydrosols externally or drink them, then as they are when they come out, which again is great, they would be used much more on that herbal level, so helping physical issues. But as a micro dilution, they work much more on a it's kind of where the physical and the emotional meet. So if you've got an emotional issue that you don't deal with that then becomes a physical issue, the hydrosols or essences can often make that lighter so it can come back out again. So it doesn't carry on being a physical issue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's quite exciting. It's quite exciting. Unfortunately, I seem to be the only person who's doing the work with this, so I've got no one to kind of, it's a slow process of working out what they're all for.
There seems to be like this sort of, I don't want to sort of interrupt the many questions I have and the many answers, but there seems to be a kind of tidal wave right now of like emotional despair amongst, whether it's, adolescents or young children, adults. There seems to be now more than ever this desperate need to like survive mental sort of disturbances and disruptions, which essentially they're going to create these illnesses such as cancers and skin diseases, and it's like all the negative ingredients are being fed right now.
Or even even if you've got a physical illness and if you're not happy, it's going to take you loads longer to get better.
Yeah.
To feel like
the common cold
or just having the belief that you can recover, or the strength to kind of get over it, or the hope that obviously if sometimes we do end up dying, but
sometimes you make it sound like there's an eternal.
But I mean from that illness. Sorry, but sometimes if we
Vigour and Skills, we found the cure for eternity.
And even doctors say that if people are given a deadline for how long they've got to live, and if they haven't, they're much more likely to live longer if they've got hope that it could be years rather than months, and they often exceed expectations. So how our mental well-being is really crucial to our health all the time. So with the essences, it's great, but the hydrosols, they've got a different dimension and different energetics. And what I love about them is, besides it being a practical process, most of my work isn't a practical process. So this is really, for me, it's really nice and practical, but you get this, it's just a whole liquid that can do so many things. You can use hydrosols for skincare, you can use them instead of herb teas, you can use them, energetically, you can use them, for having as drinks, cold fizzy drinks, or, you can use them all sorts of ways.
They're safe to ingest, aren't they?
They're really safe to ingest. I mean, obviously, if you made them from a poisonous plant, probably not. Well, definitely not. But from plants that we know, they're, compared to essential oils, the aroma, they've got the same healing aroma therapy, and one wider as well. But compared to essential oils, which have lots of contraindications, and you have to be quite wary about which essential oils you have. The hydrosol, the liquid part that comes off when you steam distill a plant, is much safer and much easier to use and much better for kids, and pregnant women and those kind of things. So you have to be a lot less careful.
A lot less cover, exactly.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any particular sort of trends or patterns in the energetic healing properties of plants throughout your work? I mean, what's the biggest?
What you mean in general society?
In general society,
yeah.
okay.
Well, and again, having made essences for 20 years now, I realise how. I think when you look back on the 2003, how when it was really quite woo-woo what I did, and it was like, okay, what's the energetics of plants or the vibration of plants, and you're like, and still I get that response, but it's not so big, and people are much more up for thinking, okay, well, the doctor can't sort everything out, is there a solution? It's like with the NHS collapsing and everything, people are looking more as like, okay, well, if I only have to pay £12, then it might be worth giving them a go. So yes, I've it's a massive, the wellness industry, full stop, is like exploding basically. But the people's willingness to try something that is just a vibration, they realize that actually everything's a vibration. This is this has got its own, everything's got its own vibration. Music, the healing properties of sound, people get that it's a vibration that goes into your ear and it changes how you feel. Vibrations do, the vibration from someone lovely being next to you, changes how you feel. They can just sit there next to you on the bus, and you kind of go, oh, someone who's smiley and light and whatever, and you kind of suddenly go, oh, okay, there's a bit of hope, rather than sitting next to a gloomy person.
Are there any gloomy plants? Is there any plants that one should avoid? I mean, that sounds like a crazy thing, but
no, because I think I often tell people that if there's plants that you don't like, they're the ones that got the biggest lessons. Like humans, the ones that you don't, they're going to trigger your stuff and bring it to the surface for you to have to deal with. So often it's the stuff that you don't like that they kind of mirroring or bringing that information in, and you go, okay, that's quite interesting. Not necessarily pleasant, but it will bring up, and you'll get more to you quicker. Yeah,
that's so funny. I have these flowers in our garden, and it's a rental, and they are so exotic. These flowers, they almost look like from the dinosaur. They just can't, I've got the usual country flowers, there, and it's all very sort of standard. And then all of a sudden in the corner, there's these sort of orange and almost fuchsia. They're kind of incredible, but they kind of bother me because it disrupts the whole sort of English countryside thing. All of a sudden, I can't explain it. And the other day, I did actually think, oh, it's great, and I was doing a sort of arrangement for the kitchen to sort of brighten the place up. And the joy these flowers brought in the house. I mean, the kids were like drawing. I mean, they were just incredible. I must find, they're still there. There's one or two left. I must find out. But they were sort of like magical flowers. You know what I mean? But in the garden, I'd walk past them and go, oh, there they are again. They're sort of obnoxious, like multicolored, red, and really bother me. And put them in the house, and it's just wonderful.
Yeah. So there's obviously a lesson there to be learned.
What are your plans for the future in terms of your work with energetic? I mean, it's world domination movement. People are just lining up around the streets.
But again, it's the mission is to get more and more people using essences and plants in whatever form they can. So if that means world domination, then unfortunately I've signed up for it. That is the mission, and the plants kind of entrusted me to be able to. It's like, okay, it's my job to get them spread as far as they can around the world, or even just the UK. I mean, obviously it's getting more and more difficult to get stuff out into the big wide world, but in the UK, what I have got on the line, not to do with the distilling. Unfortunately, it is two separate things of my life, the distilling and the essences. But I'm going to bring out a range of essences for men in the autumn. Not that essences are for everyone. There's no distinction between men and women, but there are issues that men come up with, and unfortunately, only about 10% of my sales go directly to men that I see online.
Unless it's a wife or a girlfriend buying it.
Yeah, there's the handing them over, which I know does happen, but still, there's this blockage and being the mother of sons, and I like men. I want them to I want them to thrive, blossom and thrive, and not it's been really difficult for all of us, I know, but I get the feeling that men have found it much harder. Their place in society, and the anxiety, the social anxiety, whatever that came with the pandemic, and questioning what their role is in life. So yes, I'm quite excited about that, by bringing out a range of essences for men.
I think it's very welcome.
Just like little shifts in the marketing angle, what they look like maybe, or just even the font, just little things to kind of, and the wording maybe to make men feel that these liquids are for them as well.
I don't know if we talked about this question before we sat down, actually. I don't know if it interlopes slightly with what you said, but how do you envision or hope to integrate your work with traditional medicine and healing models?
Yeah, I think the main issue with that is that we're not really allowed to use the word healing or bring essences into helping with physical issues, because it opens a can of worms, and there's unfortunately there is still such a big divide between allopathic and alternative, or real healing medicine out there. People are slowly coming over or mixing the two. That's the great thing about essences, is they mix. They're completely safe to use alongside other medication, so they can come in with people's traditional medical journey, which is really great. Yeah, so it's just helping, letting people feel that they're safe and they're not weird, and so that it's acceptable for, some GPs do recommend, they realize that they haven't got all the answers and that there are answers outside of their realm, and they do recommend people use, lots of people use rescue remedy, for instance, and doctors would probably recommend that. It might be kind of on the side, like, I'm not really supposed to tell you this, but and hopefully that'll shift. I mean, it's always been our mission to get them the essences much more mainstream and much more use language that is, triggering, that makes people feel that they can use them just to get their kids out the door without screaming them in the morning, or feel like they can get out of bed, those kind of just the everyday stuff, rather than the kind of other stuff that they can do. Essences work on all levels, and then the hydrosols, as well. It's a way of what I love about hydrosols is that you can add your flower essences to them, and so you have this mix. Like in my mists, you've got the hydrosol, which has got its own healing and energy, and then you've got the essences added to that. So it's do come in, and it's
is that what's so powerful in your essences, that there is the base of the hydrosol in there? That's what's
no, not in the little bottles, in the spray bottles.
Right.
In the spray bottles, I've added essences into those, so that when you absorb them through your skin, you get the aroma of the hydrosol. And then you get the energetics of the hydrosol and the flower essences that have been added.
I'm very excited to start this process. I wanted to see it. I've actually, because we get to have a little taste of the rosemary. I remember putting it on my tongue or something, and just this warm, calm feeling taking over my body. But before I do, I just want to.
We're going to distill rosemary later.
Yes, you're so busy though, and just in case there's any questions here, because a couple of people walked in later. Is there any questions that the audience would like to ask, or are we good to get cracking with the distilling and see how it goes? Yeah. Are you ready to take us through?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I can talk you through the process now.
Yes, talk us through the process now, and
then we can get on with it.
Yes.
Do
I move?
If I get off the chair. Yeah. So basically, what we've got here is this is the where you add your liquid. If you were distilling gin, for instance, which lots of people see the distill and they think of alcohol immediately. Often you have your liquor here and your herbs here, but with hydrosols, you have spring water in this bit. And then we're used to that. Then in this bit, which is known as the column, we put the plant material. Today we're going to do rosemary. And then basically what happens is when the water boils, it makes steam, which is much hotter than boiling water. And that steam goes through the plant material and bursts the cell walls apart, and then carries it up through this bit, which I've forgotten what it's called, this top bit.
It's like a top hat.
Yeah, so the steam comes through into this bit and then gets funneled up through there, comes through here, and this has got cold water in it. So it recondenses it back so you've got this plant material that's kind of completely exploded, and then it recondenses. And then as it hits the cold water, it's still steam when it comes down here, and it recondenses and comes out as a liquid. And then with the liquid, you have in the UK, the plants don't have to produce much oil because we don't have much sun, unfortunately, or none really. So the rosemary that I've got here, which is new growth, because it hasn't had much sun on it, it's very unlikely we'll get a kind of skim of essential oil on the top, and it's small amounts. When they make, which is why when you go to the south of France, the rosemary there is like a completely different being. It's probably a different variety, but it's just like whoa, and all the herbs are, because the plants have to make the oil to protect themselves from the sun.
Oh, just lavender. I remember going to Italy as a kid and smelled lavender just hitting, and I've got all this lavender in the garden, and it's just like sort of flat lines as far as I'm like, is it?
I mean,
I
it
can't
does.
smell
It does smell,
You've got
but
sort
it's
of
not like that. Whoa,
overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And so yeah. So that's it basically. Yeah, there's a tube here to make it bigger, and then I've got a cooling system that someone made for me, which means I can do it in places like this rather than using loads of water. But yeah, that's the process.
brilliant.
And it's as I say, you get this incredible liquid that, for me, I find really exciting.
Yeah.
Other people might just smell it and go, "Oh, that's nice," but that's fine as long as they, and it's all natural. And because it has some essential oil in it, some of the essential oil emulsifies. The liquid is cloudy, which is why in French they're called hydrolats, as in water, milky water. In the UK we call them hydrosols, but they're the same thing, and very similar. They're the same as flower waters as well. So if you see those three words, they're the same thing. It's the water part of a steam distillation.
Okay.
Yeah, and then that liquid, it's got all these uses.
Do you personally have a favourite? Which is your favourite? Go on.
What?
It's like favoritism, I guess. For you, it's like you can't have a favourite child. But I mean,
and again, it's having been a florist for a long time, people would always ask me what my favourite flower was, and it would be the one that's in my face at the time.
Right. Okay. So it's not
I go in phases. I mean, I must say, I'm really looking forward to distilling the roses being ready and distilling rose water, which is in our Rose Beauty Mist. And
I love your Rose Beauty
spray.
Mist. Well, what's rose's sort of magical property, I guess?
So roses are always heart energy.
Hearts.
And whenever I even just pulling the roses petals off the stems to put in the still, I just end up just feeling so grateful for being able to do this work. It's just like, oh my God.
Nice.
But it's because it opens this joy and this love that comes out. And again, so misting it. And it's just got very lovely scent. Again, if you're English, it's like the English rose smell. It's just like, you just go,
gorgeous.
soft, yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's brilliant. That's it. That's a wrap with our talk. We're going to start the process now, yeah? So are you ready to do that? Brilliant. Thank you very much, Saskia, for coming. London Craft Week, that's brilliant. Another London Craft Week done.
This is the last one.
This is the last talk of London Craft Week. Yeah, we'll be back next year.
Great.
So thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye. Thank you. Right.